Okay, so I'm here today to give a couple tips for the rigid slab form. So I've gotten mine to the point where this is going to sit upright, and depending on which camera view you're looking at in the recording right now, it's this general stepped shape. It's got a step in here, down low, and a step up high. And so that's the front of the shape. And then I've got my two walls. I built it sitting on the table, and I've got my two walls coming up. So now at this point, I have to start to refine my connection, my fit, so that I can put my top slab on. It's not going to be necessarily a perfect fit right away because your wall might be leaning in or leaning out, and you might need to refine that edge of the wall. So one tool that I like to have on hand is this wooden potter's knife. This is a really good tool to work with. And we're going to keep that close by. And we should have our scoring tool close by. So the first thing I want to look at is I want to look to see if where I have these steps in the form, whether they're actually going to meet up. So I'm going to put it on here. And I'm going to see if it does look visually straight up and down. And see, I can tell that my top side is actually folding in a little bit. So I need to actually straighten those walls up. And when I straighten up the main part of the wall, my step in the form isn't quite strong enough. So that means I need to support the wall and push that corner in a little bit more. And then what I might need to do is I might need to put my hand in the interior. I'm going to have my hand in here, and I'm going to be pushing out with this hand, right, to make sure that slab is really lining up where I need it to. So I can just subtly smooth on the inside to move that wall over. Now, for some of you, the curve in this area is really important. And as you're working with it, it might become overworked and not have a nice crisp edge. And the best way I know to fix that is find that wooden potter's tool I had mentioned before. And I use actually this side of the tool, and I put it next to the clay, and I rock it to create the curve that I might need for a form. So right now, I'm just trying to get this curve right here really nice and clean. Can you guys see that? Yep, looks like you can. I want to get that nice and clean. And I want this to match up. So I can just rock this side of this tool here to get that curve. And then I'll put this back on. And I'm going to double check. So the wall should be lining up right with the edge of the top that I'm putting on here. So it's looking pretty good through here. Pull that top out a little bit. Okay, I think that whole wall is looking good now. So now I'm going to come over to the other side. I'm going to double check that. So as your slabs get drier, you don't want to move anything quickly because it's really easy to crack one of these slabs, right? So everything should be slow motion. If you need the wall to come out, you want to slowly be smoothing this while you're supporting on the outside. And smooth this to bring it out. I'm going to put it back up and check it again. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, I've just got to work this one corner. This isn't curved enough to fit my form, so I'm just going to miss this a little bit and then smooth from the inside to increase that curve. And then I can put this on again. So it's a lot of testing. Once you put this on, you're not going to be able to change the form, right? So you want to make sure you get the nice crisp clean so that you don't have to worry about it later. All right, so I think I'm there. So now I'm gonna go ahead and score. Now my pieces have gotten very dry. Hopefully I mentioned this in the other how-to video, that what you can do if your piece is starting to dry out is you can go ahead and score. Then take your brush and apply a little bit of water. We're gonna let that soak in. So that's working down into the slab through capillary action. The small cuts have opened up the surface of the clay so that water can move down in through the cuts and moisten that edge. And that's a good thing. If you were in a hard leather hard stage, that would be a mandatory step, is to score a couple times and re-wet. But you could still expect some cracking if you're trying to attach things at hard leather hard. You know, it's kind of like a last ditch effort. If you've missed the window, you might be able to get it to look like it's gonna stay, and then when it goes through the bisque firing, you might end up with a crack in that area because it was too dry when it was attached. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead, I've scored the lid, I'm gonna put a little water on there. And now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna score this edge again. I'm gonna see by scoring how soft it's gotten and if it's ready to have the other wall attached to it. In this area up here, it's still a little too dry, so I'm gonna put more water. Wait just a second for it to soak in. Double check my scoring. So the key takeaway here is scoring is not a one-time shot. You can do it again if it didn't work well enough the first time. All right, so I'm gonna look, before I really push this down, I'm gonna look to see if I'm getting it all lined up, because I know it should line up, right? Because I'd spent all that time making sure that it would. Now's the time to adjust it all before I press down. All right, and once I'm feeling pretty good about it, I'll go ahead and push the clay down from the top straight down on that wall. Now you don't want to push it all in the middle of this, right? Because there's no support in the middle. You only want to push where you have the wall to push against. All right, and this is a good connection. I'm seeing some of the moisture and the slip come out from the seam as I'm pushing this together. That tells me I'm really getting it connected, and that's a good thing. Especially with rigid slab, because we're putting things together drier than we ever have before, it is harder to get these seams to stay connected, right? That's why we need that coil on the interior for insurance. We gotta make sure we score really well, have enough water. All right, so can you guys see how the slip came out of that seam while I pressed it together? So I got a really good connection there. Now what I can do is I can, use my finger or something else. I'll just clean some of that extra material off. Trying to do that as neatly as possible because I'm gonna have to come back and clean that mark up later. All right. So to get this connected at the right area, I had to line up at this curve in the wall of my form. And what that's left me with is an uneven area. Let me see if I can get this on camera. Can you see how there's a step here? It's not completely flush at that edge. So that means I need to trim that down. So I can take my fettling knife. You guys probably got one of these in your toolkit. And you can take that and you can very carefully trim this down by cutting. That's going to be a bad angle for me, so I have to turn it. All right, hopefully you guys can still see that on camera. So I'm just going to go ahead and start to trim this down a little bit. And I'm just shaving a little bit off. I don't want to take too much because once you're working with rigid slab, it's hard to add things back on, right? So you just want to do a little bit at a time. All right, I think that's going to be good. And so now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and put that coil into those corners to make sure that that side doesn't want to come off. For right now, I've done it on this side. You can see the coil in there, okay? We're gonna assume that I did that, and I wanna show you, I'll just quickly add the bottom onto this form. So lots of scoring again, the addition of the water. Now, one thing I am grading you guys on is the crispness of this form, right? If we're trying to make a geometric form, then it's pretty essential that it's a crisp, clean edge. I'm going to set this down while I score it so it's supported by the table. I try to do everything supported by the table because that way things aren't going to bend and become out of shape. All right, so this slab has actually gotten quite dry on me, so I'll probably end up getting a crack on this piece between the side walls and the bottom because I let this get too dry. Or after I'm off screen, I'll cut this one off and I'll add a nice fresh slab. Roll one out, let it stiffen up a little bit and add that on because since this is so dry, the likelihood of this cracking is more than 50-50, so that's not good odds. Not if I'm being graded on whether the pieces crack and open up, have clean edges. It's interesting trying to find where the camera view is on the table. All right, now this bottom is not an absolute perfect fit, but I wanted to do that to show you guys a trick on one thing that you can do to kind of fudge this a little bit and make it look like it was meant to be. So first I'll clean that extra slip off so I can see exactly what I have here. All right, so now what I'm gonna do, you can see there's a little step between the bottom slab and where the wall comes up. It's not perfectly meeting up, probably because this slab is so dry, it already shrunk. So even though I had measured it, I let it get too dry. And as we know, when clay dries, it shrinks. This is probably a question that will be on the exam. And when it shrinks, that means it's not going to line up right anymore. So I can use this tool to create, by compressing, I can create nice straight areas again. And I can do that at the corners. I can rock and roll with the tool over the corner to create a nice corner edge here. I can do it on this bottom edge, rock and So because this wooden potter's knife is so nice and straight, you know, I'm using that to my advantage. So I get that much area that's nice and straight because I'm compressing against something rigid and straight. If we just smooth with our finger rather than compressing with a nice straight tool, then you can have an undulation, right? You might push more in one spot than another and it's gonna move. But by compressing with the straight tool, you're kind of ensuring that you get a straight line in the end. If you don't have this wooden potter's knife, I'll often use the handle of a wooden spoon. That works well too, if it's a flat handle rather than a straight, or rather than the round handle. All right, and then I want you guys to remember, we're aiming for the appearance of a nice, clean geometric form. But if we leave edges very, very crisp and clean and sharp, after the work is fired, it will be very sharp. They actually do make ceramic knives because you can have very sharp ceramics, right? So I've got this nice and straight, it's crisp and clean, and now I'll rock my tool over that edge so it's not too sharp. Kind of buff it down with my finger, soften it just a little bit. So see, it still appears to be very clean edge, but soften just a tiny bit.
Could you show that again? Because it was kind of off. Oh, okay, there you go.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the demo gets chopped up a lot if I keep looking to make sure I'm on camera. I'm gonna have to like draw a pencil line or something of where the best spot on camera is. All right, so I'm just kind of checking my seams real quick. Seeing if there's anything else that I might want to adjust by just taking this tool and rocking it a little. Adjust the curve on it, make it nice. So Joshelle, you can see where this is going to come into play on your form, right? The shape of your...
Yeah.
So you'll just be able to come right around your form like this and adjust every little subtle part of the curve.
Okay.
And then again, I'll just take my finger. Because my clay is really firm, I can just run my finger down it and it just rounds that edge a tiny bit, right? If my clay is too soft, then I would kind of take the crispness away from that edge. So you have to make a judgment call on how much pressure to use and when to do it. All right, so my form is now built. I need to clean up this top edge because you can see this also has a little step here, okay? It doesn't match up perfectly. I leave my sides a little bit long to make sure I can get, I'd rather have too much and have to cut it away than have to try to add something on. So right now I can just clean these up. Again, I can use the fettling knife, or if you're going to be in clay for a while, you might want to get one of these Sureform blades. They're like a little miniature cheese grater, and you can just shave away the extra clay with that. So you can get these Sureforms at Home Depot and Lowe's for, I don't know, maybe $5. They come with a little handle. You don't have to get the handle. Just a lot of times they don't have the refills. You have to order them online sometimes from Home Depot. So it might have a little yellow handle attached to it, or you can just get the refill blade if you're ordering online. All right, so you can see how that did have a step, and now it's a nice smooth edge. And I'm ready. If I had another slab ready, I could just go ahead and put that one on. But before I do that, I'm gonna wanna go back from this side, and I'm gonna wanna put those coils into the corner, right? Because otherwise, while this is drying, that seam could open up, and we don't want that seam to open up. That would be a bummer. Okay. Now, sometimes what I like to do too is I like to come back in. You know, we textured this so beautifully with the roller, but this is the cut edge of our front slab, so it has no texture. So if that's too jarring of a look for me, I might come back and I might clean that up and put some texture in there. Or I might go the other route and push it a little bit further. And so I might end up maybe taking some kind of tool. And if my clay is not too firm, we'll check this out, see if we can do this. I can put a little detail that makes it look like it has, you know, a screw or a nail or something, a rivet in the form. So that's kind of a fun little added detail. All right, so those are some tips for doing that. Other things you might do is when it starts to dry some, you might take a soft brush, and if you did carving, a couple students are carving, and there's a lot of the flaky crumbs of clay in the carving, you might want to see if you can brush them out. And then if you've lost some of the definition in your carving, you could take a wooden modeling tool with a nice point. You could take and sharpen up a pencil. I kind of like with the pencil once it's gotten just a tiny bit dull, and you can use that to go back in and clean up your carving. If it has really rough edges, you can just compress and drag through the carving. Let's see if I have an extra piece of clay here. So if I had really messy carving, I could take the tool, and one thing I like to do is I like to hold the pencil, not like I'm about to write, but with my finger above the top of it. And so the pencil's horizontal, and then I can drag that pencil, and it gives me a nice, whoops, broke my pencil. All right, it was already broken to start with, it just went the rest of the way. By holding this tool more horizontal, I'm compressing this pattern into the clay, which is going to make it a little crisper. And as the clay dries, I can flake all those little crunchies away. If I try to do it with the tool upright, I get a lot rougher edge right along that line. And so it'll look a little bit messier. It kind of chips the grog out of that line. So again, I just like to hold that tool sideways and compress down while I drag it through. Okay. So I hope that helps. And I look forward, guys, close-up shot of them. Hope to see your guys' finished work soon. Joshelle, do you have any questions that would be helpful?
Not at the moment that I can think of. Except for, what are you going to do when you put your lid on that vessel?
Well, I do have to, so it's not going to be a vessel, right? Because we're,
Oh, sorry, on your sculpture.
right, we're sculpture class. We're not making pots.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on there, and then I have to choose what's going to be the bottom so that I can put a hole in it. So
but I guess I was asking in terms of sealing it with the thin coil, does it just not get anything? It just gets a good.
That one just gets a really good scoring. So you want to make sure you don't use your last driest, chunkiest slab. You want to use a really good quality slab with just the right moisture content, so that when you score those two pieces together, you can get a really nice connection. Yeah. So good question. Yeah. Yeah, so I usually try to choose one of my smallest sides to be that side, the last one to go on, so that I've got less of a risk in, a 4-inch seam than I do in an 8-inch seam. So, yeah, the risk of the night, the roll of the dice. All right, well, those are the tips for the night. And I'll probably do another recording for the review for the midterm, but those are the clay tips for tonight. I will stop the recording now and see you guys later.